You think you can just ignore the rules? Linda Pemberton's Mercedes G-Wagon lurched forward, slamming into my newly planted Japanese maple for the third time this week. People like you don't belong in Cedar Ridge Estates. Her finger jabbed toward my face while her other hand gripped the steering wheel. I stood there in my work boots and paint-stained jeans, watching this $60,000 SUV destroy $300 worth of my property while she screamed about community standards and property values. My phone was recording every word from my jacket pocket. What she didn't know was that I'd spent 15 years as a landscape architect, and I was about to replace that decorative tree with something that would turn her luxury vehicle into damaged metal while teaching an entire gated community that some neighbors fight back with engineering degrees and knowledge of property law. The suburban conflict that followed would expose a $38,000 kickback scheme, destroy her marriage, result in federal fraud charges, and prove that the most dangerous opponent isn't the one who yells the loudest, it's the one who documents everything and knows exactly where the legal violations are buried. If your HOA board member was literally damaging your property with their vehicle every morning while stealing from the community fund, what would you do? Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Let me explain how a divorced landscape architect ended up in a legal conflict with the HOA's self-appointed enforcer over ornamental trees and construction contracts. My name is Jackson Torres. I'm 42 years old, and I've been designing residential and commercial landscapes since I graduated from NC State back in 2008. Recently divorced, after 16 years of marriage, navigating split custody of my two kids, Sophia, 15, and Nathan, 12. We relocated to Cedar Ridge Estates about 18 months ago, right after the divorce finalized in March 2024. I bought a corner lot property in this planned community outside Charlotte, where every shrub has to be HOA approved and fence heights are regulated precisely. I figured it would be stable for the kids. Good schools in the area, safe streets, the kind of neighborhood where families know each other. What I didn't count on was Linda Pemberton, a 58-year-old widow who'd crowned herself the community's aesthetic compliance coordinator, a position that exists nowhere in our actual HOA governing documents. Linda drives a graphite gray Mercedes G-Wagon that costs more than most people's annual salary. She moved into Cedar Ridge about 2 years back after her husband died and left her with significant money and unlimited free time. No children. Formerly worked as a bank executive before early retirement. The woman has memorized every comma in the HOA covenant and treats our monthly assessments like her personal expense account. She's tight with the HOA president, Donald Kessler, which basically gives her immunity from any accountability. That relationship would prove crucial later when the financial investigation started unraveling. My corner lot placement means my landscaping is highly visible from two streets, Magnolia Drive and Oakwood Circle. City beautification ordinances actually encourage decorative plantings within 8 feet of property corners to enhance neighborhood aesthetics, which is exactly why I'd invested in professional landscape design featuring native North Carolina species, including that Japanese maple that became Linda's first casualty. The initial incident happened on a Thursday morning in early October 2024. I'm getting the kids ready for school, packing lunches. Then I hear this cracking sound of wood splintering, followed by metal scraping against landscape rock. I run outside to find my 3-year-old Japanese maple, a $250 tree I'd planted professionally just 6 weeks earlier, snapped at the base. Decorative river rock scattered across the curb, and soil sprayed across the sidewalk. There's Linda backing up her G-Wagon with theatrical surprise. "Oh my goodness," she calls out. "These corner plantings create such dangerous sightline obstructions. I hope you weren't attached to that little tree." I'd specifically chosen Acer palmatum bloodgood for its compact growth and fall color. But I kept my professional composure and figured maybe it was genuinely accidental. I spent 40 minutes that morning restaking the damaged tree, cleaning up soil and rock, replanting what I could salvage. Sophia and Nathan watched from the living room window, mortified that their dad was crawling around in the landscaping wearing his bathrobe and work boots. That first week, it happened 4 more times. Same pattern, 6:45 a.m., sharp, the rumble of her engine, the crack of wood or crunch of stone, then silence as she drove away. By the following Tuesday, I knew this wasn't accidental. By Friday, I had documentation. Margaret Chen, my retired neighbor 2 houses down, confirmed what I suspected. She takes the long route on purpose. Margaret told me, standing in her garden, there's plenty of clearance on the other side, but she aims for your landscaping every single morning. I tried the reasonable approach first. I caught Linda during one of her afternoon compliance walks, where she photographs everyone's property. Hey, about the landscaping damage. I started, but she cut me off with a condescending smile. Jackson, I understand that landscaping is your profession. But these suburban streets weren't designed for plantings that obstruct traffic sightlines. Perhaps you should consider more appropriate species selection and setback distances. Species selection? I have a degree in landscape architecture and 15 years of commercial design experience. That maple was positioned perfectly within all setback requirements, and its mature height would barely reach 12 feet. That night, I started building my case. Property surveys, municipal code books, HOA covenant documents, state landscaping regulations. It turned out decorative plantings on private property enjoy extensive legal protection under North Carolina law, and HOAs have zero authority over species selection or placement as long as height and setback requirements are met. Our HOA covenants specifically encourage aesthetically pleasing native and ornamental plantings to enhance community visual appeal. That's directly from Section 6.2 of our governing documents. By November, I'd replaced 7 different landscape elements at a total cost of $640. The kids were stressed about the daily property destruction. The situation needed resolution. That's when Linda's satisfaction became visible during her morning destruction runs. She began making direct eye contact through her tinted windows with this satisfied expression that said she knew exactly what she was doing and enjoyed it. Challenge accepted. 3 weeks into November 2024, Linda escalated from property vandalism to bureaucratic harassment that would have impressed authoritarian administrators. I returned from a commercial design consultation to find a certified letter waiting. The heavy cotton paper felt expensive, and the embossed letterhead screamed, "Legal consultation." Unauthorized landscape modifications creating vehicular safety hazards, it read. Section 6.8.2. No plantings shall obstruct reasonable sight lines for vehicular traffic. Remedy required within 72 hours or face $50 daily fines, escalating to property lien status. She'd obviously rushed this through an emergency board process while I was focused on documenting her destruction pattern. After 4 hours cross-referencing city beautification ordinances with county traffic regulations and state landscaping statutes, I found what I needed. North Carolina Department of Transportation explicitly permits ornamental plantings within residential setback zones, provided they don't exceed certain mature heights. HOAs can regulate aesthetics, but they can't create restrictions that contradict professional engineering standards. I spent the weekend building my defense. Security camera system installed for $89 at Costco. Professional traffic sightline analysis conducted according to NCDOT standards, showing zero obstruction. Even got Margaret Chen to provide written testimony. Meanwhile, Linda was using social media to escalate her campaign. The neighborhood Facebook group exploded with posts about reckless homeowners creating traffic hazards. The comment section became divided between her vocal supporters and everyone else who recognized this as a power trip. Then came the move that revealed her desperation. A contact at City Planning, Robert Mitchell, who I'd collaborated with on several commercial projects, called me with concerning news. Jackson, someone filed 6 separate traffic safety complaints about your corner property. They're all obviously written by the same person. The IP address shows them all submitted within 20 minutes at 3:17 a.m. By Friday's board meeting, I'd assembled comprehensive documentation. The community center had 14 homeowners present, a record turnout. Linda sat at the board table wearing a burgundy blazer, but I noticed the tremor when she reached for her water bottle. When they opened the floor for resident concerns, I stood with my evidence folder. I'd like to address the violation notice regarding landscape modifications. I read the NCDOT ordinance verbatim, displayed my professional sightline analysis showing full compliance with traffic engineering standards, then mentioned my consultation with Rebecca Thornton, a property rights attorney who'd handled numerous HOA cases across North Carolina. She found the selective enforcement patterns particularly interesting, I added, watching Linda's face drain of color, especially when combined with the fabricated safety complaints filed with the city. President Kessler cleared his throat before speaking. Well, This obviously requires additional review. We'll table this matter pending further consideration. But Linda wasn't finished. As we filed toward the parking lot, she cornered me near my truck with enough volume that a dozen homeowners could hear every word. "You think you're so clever?" she hissed. "People like you move into established communities and think you can do whatever you want. Well, I've got news for you. This is just the beginning. We have standards here, and I intend to protect them." The implications hung in the November air. Several neighbors gasped audibly. My phone, positioned in my jacket pocket, captured every word in high-definition audio. That night, Sophia asked why the angry lady hated us so much. Nathan wanted to know if we'd have to move again. I tucked them in, promising everything would work out fine. But privately, I was calculating the escalating costs. 4 landscape replacements, 20 hours of documentation, attorney consultation fees mounting. But something had shifted in the community atmosphere. Other homeowners were whispering about board overreach, questioning the selective enforcement patterns. Linda's parking lot outburst had exposed what many suspected. This wasn't about traffic safety or community aesthetics. It was about power, control, and putting people she considered beneath her in their place. The next morning brought a telling change in tactics. Instead of her usual aggressive, ramming approach, Linda drove past my corner landscaping at crawling speed, studying it. The pattern was evolving, which meant the real conflict was about to begin. December hit Cedar Ridge Estates, and Linda retaliated with the fury of someone who'd been publicly humiliated at a board meeting. While I was celebrating my initial victory, she was busy weaponizing every obscure covenant clause she could find. The assault came in coordinated waves. First, a violation notice about my exterior lighting. Apparently my porch fixtures cast excessive glare. Then, my driveway sealant color, which she classified as non-compliant charcoal instead of approved black. Finally, a complaint about my lawn service schedule creating noise disruptions during her morning walks. Each violation carried $75 fines with 7-day payment deadlines. I spent an entire Saturday documenting identical violations across 23 other properties. Donald Kessler's porch lights were actually brighter than mine by measurable lumens. The Hendersons' driveway showed identical sealant weathering. Half the neighborhood used the same lawn service on the same schedule, but somehow only my violations warranted enforcement action. While Linda played covenant prosecutor, I was having coffee with Stephen Kowalski at the landscape supply yard. Stephen's been a hardscape contractor for 19 years. "You know," he said, stirring sweetener into his coffee, "there's nothing in city code about what materials you can use for landscape borders or decorative elements. Natural stone, concrete, steel, edging, as long as it meets height restrictions and setback requirements, you're completely legal." That conversation planted a seed. 300 pounds of reinforced concrete, professional engineering specifications, and a decorative landscape boulder that looked completely natural but would withstand vehicular impact like a bank vault. Total cost, $380 versus the $800 I was facing in mounting fines and replacement landscaping. But first, I needed to address her harassment campaign. I filed a formal complaint with the HOA board about discriminatory and selective enforcement practices that appeared to target specific homeowners while ignoring identical violations elsewhere. Bureaucrats hate when you force them to apply their own standards consistently. My complaint required the board to either enforce covenants equally across all 312 properties or admit they were specifically targeting me. Neither option worked in Linda's favor. I analyzed her enforcement pattern demographics. Over the past 14 months, Linda had issued 93 violation notices. 67 went to single parents, elderly residents, or newer homeowners. Only 26 targeted longtime residents or board-connected families. The pattern was obvious enough to potentially constitute Fair Housing Act violations. I'd researched Fair Housing Act provisions during my commercial work. Discriminatory enforcement in planned communities can trigger HUD investigations and civil rights violations. Friday afternoon, I started my weekend concrete project. Sophia and Nathan helped me mix specialized high-strength concrete in the garage while 90s alternative rock played on my job site radio. The smell of curing concrete reminded me of helping my grandfather build our backyard patio 25 years ago. The engineering was elegant in its simplicity, decorative landscape boulder appearance, using specialized concrete forming techniques, steel rebar reinforcement throughout, drainage considerations maintained for landscaping health. From the street, it looked like an attractive natural stone element. Inside, 300 pounds of reinforced concrete waited to teach Linda a physics lesson about immovable objects. Monday morning, I positioned my newly installed landscape boulder in the exact location where she'd destroyed 7 previous plantings. Perfect compliance with all setback requirements. Professional installation meeting, engineering standards, aesthetically appropriate for the neighborhood design aesthetic. 6:45 came on schedule, along with the rumble of Linda's overcompensating engine, but this time, her approach was more cautious. She'd obviously noticed something different about my corner landscaping. The first impact came at maybe 20 miles per hour. The sound was completely different. Instead of the crack of breaking wood or scatter of decorative stone, there was a solid thunk, followed by the screech of metal on concrete and the explosive hiss of a punctured tire. Her G-Wagon's front bumper crumpled like aluminum foil, while my landscape boulder sat there looking completely unmoved. I watched through my kitchen window, coffee mug warm in my hands, as Linda sat motionless in her luxury SUV for a full 45 seconds, processing what had just happened. She revved the engine and tried reversing, creating additional scraping damage to her undercarriage. The beauty of the entire installation was its complete legality. 0 code violations, no covenant conflicts, just a homeowner implementing professional-grade hardscaping with appropriate materials. If she wanted to keep ramming it, that was her choice, and her insurance claim to explain. Over the next 10 days, Linda made increasingly desperate attempts to damage my concrete installation. Each collision left new destruction on her graphite gray G-Wagon, while my landscape boulder remained completely intact, gathering only superficial paint transfers. By the second week of December, her SUV showed nearly $3,000 in accumulated damage: crumpled bumper, damaged fog lights, scraped undercarriage, misaligned front end. The neighborhood was definitely talking, and for once, Linda wasn't controlling the narrative. By mid-December, Linda had transformed from neighborhood busybody into someone deeply obsessed with my landscaping. The woman was so fixated on my concrete boulder that she'd probably been having stress nightmares about reinforced hardscaping. I'd catch glimpses of her damaged G-Wagon, now sporting an impressive collection of dents, scrapes, and one completely shattered fog light cruising past my property at random hours. The first indication of her investigation came Tuesday evening when Margaret Chin called. "Jackson, that woman was in your yard last night around midnight with a flashlight and what looked like testing equipment. I watched from my bedroom. She was examining your landscape boulder and taking photographs from every angle. The mental image was absurd. Linda dressed in dark clothing, using her iPhone flashlight to investigate a landscape boulder, desperately trying to prove it violated some obscure regulation. Her investigation intensified throughout the week. Stephen Kowalski mentioned she'd ambushed him at the contractor supply yard, interrogating him about concrete sales and asking whether any landscape architects had purchased unusual hardscaping materials recently. She'd even started monitoring my social media accounts, searching for construction hints in my Instagram posts. The move that revealed her true desperation came Thursday when she weaponized municipal bureaucracy again. A city inspector arrived at my door. "Ma'am filed a complaint about unauthorized structural installations," he explained, checking boxes on his tablet with little enthusiasm. Something about unpermitted concrete construction on residential property. I walked Carlos to my corner landscaping, where he spent maybe 45 seconds examining it before shaking his head. "It's decorative hardscaping, not a structural foundation, no permits required, 0 violations present." But Linda wasn't finished. The following week brought a notice from the HOA demanding immediate property access for comprehensive compliance verification of exterior modifications. The letter was obviously drafted by Linda and rubber-stamped by %NEC, President Kessler. I'd spent hours reading North Carolina case law about HOA authority. The precedent was clear. HOAs cannot conduct fishing expeditions on private property without specific, documented violations or genuine emergency circumstances. My response was professionally polite but legally firm. No private property access without a court order. If they wanted to inspect my legal landscape boulder, they could examine it from the public sidewalk. The smell of Linda's frustration was almost satisfying as curing concrete. Meanwhile, her vehicle was becoming a rolling advertisement for why you shouldn't ram hardscape installations. Each morning brought new collision attempts. Each attempt left additional damage on her G-Wagon. The front bumper now hung at an angle. Both fog lights were shattered. The undercarriage scraped whenever she hit speed bumps. One wheel showed alignment issues that created visible tire wear. The neighborhood was absolutely noticing. During my Saturday morning coffee run, I overheard 4 different conversations about that crazy HOA lady who keeps hitting the same landscape boulder. Margaret Chen had started timing Linda's morning routine. The teenage kids on Oakwood Circle had apparently created a betting pool on how much additional damage she'd cause each week. Sophia found the situation simultaneously hilarious and mortifying. "Dad, kids at school are asking if we're the family with the concrete boulder lady," she told me over dinner. I don't know whether to hide or claim credit for having the most legendary revenge story in the entire school district. Nathan, ever practical, wanted to know if we could monetize the entertainment. "Seriously, Dad, we could charge neighbors $10 for premium seating to watch the morning demolition derby. I'd have my college fund covered by graduation." The breakthrough came when Jennifer Wallace, the only rational board member, approached me after a community event. Speaking quietly near the refreshment table, she shared intelligence that changed everything. "Jackson, you need to know Linda's been having closed-door meetings with Donald about expanded enforcement authority. She wants the board to authorize property inspections, material restrictions, even contractor approval requirements for any homeowner projects. But Jennifer's biggest revelation was financial. She's also been aggressively pushing for approval of maintenance contracts with some company I'd never heard of before. Every budget discussion, she has these detailed proposals ready, like she's been planning for months." That night, I started a different investigation entirely. If Linda was this obsessed with controlling neighborhood projects and pushing specific contractors, maybe her motivation wasn't just power, maybe it was profit. Public records are remarkable resources, and North Carolina's business registration database tells fascinating stories about who profits from what. By Sunday evening, I'd uncovered something significant. Linda Whitmore wasn't just a control freak with unlimited time and declining mental stability. She was running a scheme. Over the past 5 months, Pemberton Property Services LLC had been awarded 9 different maintenance contracts by our HOA board. Landscape maintenance, irrigation repairs, community signage updates, parking lot seal coating, entrance monument restoration. Total value, $38,400. The bidding patterns told the real story. On every single contract, Pemberton Property Services had underbid competitors by exactly $75 to $150. Not enough to trigger obvious suspicion, but precisely enough to guarantee selection. Linda had voted to approve every single one of those contracts. 9 votes, 9 approvals, 9 payments to her family business. The conflict of interest was so blatant, it was obvious. Board members are legally required to disclose any financial interests in vendor contracts. Failure to disclose violates North Carolina nonprofit corporation law and opens exposure to both civil liability and criminal fraud charges. The timeline revealed something even more damaging. My first casual conversation with Linda about the landscape damage, October 8th, 2024. My first questioning of inflated maintenance expenses at the monthly board meeting, September 27th, 2024. She'd started her harassment campaign exactly 11 days after I'd innocently asked why we were spending so much on basic maintenance. My concrete landscape boulder hadn't just been blocking her morning power walk, it had been protecting evidence of systematic theft from 312 homeowners. I immediately copied everything to 3 separate cloud storage services and sent the complete evidence package to attorney Rebecca Thornton Tuesday morning. I watched from my kitchen window as Linda made her routine collision attempt with my concrete boulder. Her G-Wagon displayed over $4,000 in accumulated damage. My landscape installation sat there completely intact, but for the first time, I wasn't thinking about landscape boulders or HOA covenants. I was thinking about justice and the satisfaction of watching someone discover that some victims document everything and know exactly where the violations are buried. Tuesday evening, my garage transformed into a strategic command center. I'd cleared the workbenches and arranged folding tables. The core team assembled by 7:30 p.m. sharp. Margaret Chen arrived first, carrying a thermos of green tea. Robert Martinez showed up straight from his insurance office. Jennifer Wallace brought a stack of HOA financial documents she'd copied from board files. Stephen Kowalski rolled in last, carrying a box of bagels. "All right," I said, taping timeline charts to the garage wall. "Here's what we're dealing with. 38,000 in questionable contracts, 9 separate conflict of interest violations, 64 documented harassment incidents, 1 increasingly damaged Mercedes serving as rolling evidence of Linda's actions." Jennifer whistled softly when she examined the financial analysis. I knew something felt wrong about those contract approvals, but I never imagined it was this systematic. Every time I questioned the expenses, Linda had these detailed justifications ready. Stephen examined the vehicle damage photos with professional interest. "That front end is going to cost at least $6,000 to repair. The suspension damage alone will destroy her tires within 6 months." We spent the next 90 minutes organizing our coordinated strategy. Robert would monitor Linda's activities and document any retaliation attempts. Margaret would coordinate the door-to-door campaign gathering neighbor support. Jennifer would work internally, building board consensus for a comprehensive financial audit. Stephen would serve as technical consultant on any construction-related evidence. The legal strategy required surgical precision. File too early, and Linda might destroy evidence. Wait too long, and she could complete whatever cover-up she was surely planning. Complex issues require layered solutions. Fighting HOA overreach with just property rights arguments is like trying to fix drainage problems by moving one downspout. You need to address the entire system. Our approach would strike from 4 directions simultaneously: legal pressure through criminal complaints and civil lawsuits, social pressure through community organizing and petition campaigns, political pressure through media exposure and municipal oversight, financial pressure through audit demands and contract cancellations. The community organizing phase launched Wednesday morning. Armed with professional presentation materials and documentation, I began visiting every house in Cedar Ridge Estates. The response exceeded expectations. 106 signatures supporting property rights reform, 41 demanding immediate financial audits, 17 volunteering testimony at the upcoming emergency board meeting. Mrs. Rodriguez from Magnolia Drive nearly slammed her door before I could explain. 3 minutes later, she was furiously signing the petition. That woman tried to fine me for having Christmas decorations up 3 days past the January 5th deadline. 3 days! The opposition mapping revealed telling patterns. Linda's hardcore supporters were exclusively longtime homeowners who'd benefited from selective enforcement. The fence-sitters were mostly newer residents worried about property values. Everyone else was ready for accountability. Media preparation took 4 days of careful coordination. WSOC TV Channel 9's investigative team specialized in local government corruption. The media packet included professional timeline graphics, expert legal analysis, and 14 minutes of edited footage showing Linda's escalating collision attempts with my landscape boulder. The social media explosion happened faster than expected. The Cedar Ridge Transparency Facebook group gained 89 members in 5 days, with neighbors sharing their own stories of selective enforcement and financial irregularities. Someone posted a time-lapse compilation of Linda's morning routine set to cartoon sound effects that went viral. Thursday morning brought collision attempt number 43, resulting in a side mirror that now hung by its wiring. The neighborhood kids had started gathering at bus stops early just to witness the daily spectacle. Sophia reported that her entire friend group was calling our house the place with the indestructible boulder. Nathan had started charging classmates $1 each to watch the video compilation. By Sunday evening, everything was coordinated. Emergency board meetings scheduled for Thursday night. Media interviews arranged for Friday morning. Criminal complaints prepared for Monday filing. 134 residents committed to attending, with 23 planning to speak during public comment. The weekend before our planned board meeting confrontation, Linda's behavior crossed from harassment into criminal territory. Desperation has a particular quality in how it manifests, and it was showing in her every move. She'd obviously sensed the walls closing in because her tactics escalated faster than her G-Wagon could ram my landscape boulder. Saturday night, around 2:30 a.m., I was awakened by the hiss of spray paint. Through my bedroom window, I spotted a dark figure crouched beside my landscape installation. By the time I'd grabbed my phone, they'd vanished, leaving amateur graffiti spelling "MOVE" in bright orange across the concrete surface. By the time 4K security cameras had captured everything, including the license plate of the graphite gray Mercedes G-Wagon parked 4 houses down, Monday brought escalation to a new level. An anonymous complaint to the gas utility claimed I'd been conducting unauthorized excavation that might damage underground infrastructure. The utility inspector who arrived was apologetic but thorough. Whoever reported this either has serious vision problems or serious psychological problems. There's no excavation work anywhere near your property lines. The revelation that exposed Linda's complete desperation came Tuesday afternoon. Robert Martinez found me at the landscape supply yard. Jackson, she hired a private investigation firm to surveil your property. $250 per day for surveillance on a landscaping dispute. The woman's absolutely lost her mind. But Linda's surveillance worked both directions. My upgraded security system had captured her drive-by photography sessions and her increasingly erratic behavior patterns. Wednesday brought the discovery that genuinely angered me. Sophia came home from school visibly upset, having overheard Linda talking to another parent about inappropriate influences and questionable role models in the community. The racial and class-based undertones weren't subtle, and the implications for my custody evaluation were crystal clear. That evening, I retained Maria Santos, a retired police detective specializing in stalking and harassment investigations. The sabotage attempts intensified throughout the week. Someone poured what appeared to be battery acid on my concrete installation. It left a small stain but caused zero structural damage. Anonymous complaints flooded city departments. Fake negative reviews appeared on my Google business listing. But the most shocking discovery came Friday evening. Nathan was working on his skateboard in the driveway when he noticed something unusual attached to my work truck's undercarriage. "Dad," he called out, "what's this device stuck under your truck?" "GPS tracker, commercial grade. Probably costs $400. Definitely illegal when placed without consent or court authorization. I photographed it before carefully removing it and driving directly to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. Detective Christopher Hayes took the report with the expression of someone who'd witnessed this escalation pattern before. "Mr. Torres, this crosses from neighborhood disputes into criminal stalking territory. Unauthorized surveillance devices, harassment, property damage. We're building a case file that could result in serious charges." The insurance fraud angle developed simultaneously. Linda had filed a $4,200 claim for road hazard damage, claiming her collisions occurred on public streets. My security footage clearly showed deliberate targeting of my landscape installation from multiple angles. When her insurance investigator from State Farm called requesting an interview, I was prepared with a comprehensive evidence package. The investigator's response was immediate. "Ma'am, this isn't road hazard damage. This is intentional property destruction. We're denying the claim and referring the case to our Special Investigations Unit for fraud charges." The community pressure was building. Our Facebook transparency group had grown to 107 members, sharing outrageous stories of Linda's behavior. Even Donald Kessler was privately distancing himself from her actions, according to Jennifer's intelligence. Saturday morning brought collision attempt number 47, resulting in a completely detached front bumper section that Linda had to retrieve from my yard. By Sunday evening, the evidence compilation was complete. Criminal behavior documented in high definition. Witness statements notarized. Financial fraud exposed with receipts. Community coalition organized with precision. Thursday's emergency board meeting would be less of a confrontation and more of a public reckoning. Linda just didn't know it yet. Monday morning, 18 hours before our planned board meeting showdown, Linda executed her most desperate maneuver yet. Donald Kessler called an emergency closed executive session to address what he termed escalating liability, concerns, and community safety issues. The emergency meeting was textbook damage control. 4 board members huddled in the clubhouse office, while attorney Gregory Harrison Billed $500 hourly. Through the window blinds, I could observe animated gestures and Linda waving documents. Jennifer Wallace texted me updates. Linda claiming you've made threatening statements. Wants emergency authority to remove dangerous installations. Gregory looks like he'd rather be defending someone else. The cover-up attempt was as clumsy as Linda's collision techniques. Someone had backdated conflict of interest disclosure forms, but the digital timestamps on email servers told the real story. You can't retroactively create ethics compliance, especially when the original contract votes are recorded in official meeting minutes. Meanwhile, the insurance investigation was accelerating. State investigator Patricia Morrison had subpoenaed HOA financial records, board meeting minutes, and all communication between Linda and the association's insurance carrier. The paper trail was obvious. Tuesday afternoon brought the revelation I never expected. Richard Pemberton, Linda's stepson from her late husband's first marriage, called me directly. Jackson, his voice barely rose above a whisper. This needs to end. She spent $19,000 on lawyers, surveillance, and vehicle repairs. Our insurance canceled coverage. The business is facing contract cancellations and possible criminal charges. I need to know what would it take to resolve this. I almost felt sympathy. Almost. Richard, your stepmother stalked my family, vandalized my property, committed insurance fraud, and embezzled from 312 homeowners. This isn't resolving with an apology and a settlement check. The twist, revealing their true desperation, came 3 hours before the board meeting. Linda filed an emergency protective order petition based on completely fabricated evidence. The petition was so poorly constructed that Judge Michael Patterson dismissed it without even scheduling a preliminary hearing. Miss Pemberton, these audio recordings are obviously edited. These photographs are clearly manipulated, and these witnesses appear to be fictional. Filing false evidence constitutes contempt of court. Consider this your only warning before I refer you for criminal prosecution. But Linda's legal troubles were multiplying faster than her collision attempts. The North Carolina Insurance Commissioner had assigned investigator Patricia Morrison to build a criminal fraud case. The Mecklenburg County District Attorney's Office was reviewing harassment and stalking charges. The IRS had received copies of all financial documentation showing unreported business income. As 7 p.m. approached, the clubhouse parking lot filled up like an event venue. Cars lined both sides of Magnolia Drive with neighbors walking from 5 blocks away carrying folding chairs and signs. WSOC Channel 9's news van arrived at 6:15, followed by the Charlotte Observer and 2 local bloggers covering our story. Inside the meeting room, the tension was visible. 134 residents packed into a space designed for 50, with overflow crowds standing along walls. The smell of nervous perspiration mixed with industrial-strength coffee created a thick atmosphere. Linda arrived late, flanked by Gregory Harrison, and looking like she'd rather be anywhere else on the planet. Her usual burgundy blazer had been replaced with funeral black, and the tremor in her hands was visible from across the room. Donald Kessler kept adjusting his tie. The attempted intimidation backfired spectacularly. Harrison's opening statement about frivolous complaints and disruptive residents was interrupted by Margaret Chen standing up with her stack of witness statements. "Excuse me," she said in her precise English, "but which one of us has been committing insurance fraud and embezzling community funds?" The room erupted in applause. 23 neighbors had prepared to speak during public comment, each armed with documentation of Linda's harassment or financial irregularities. The evidence compilation filled 4 bankers' boxes and included everything from collision footage to contract analysis to criminal complaint receipts, but the real bombshell came at exactly 7:52 p.m. Detective Christopher Hayes walked through the clubhouse doors carrying an official folder. "Apologies for the interruption," he announced to the suddenly silent room, "but I have arrest warrants to serve regarding insurance fraud, stalking, and filing false police reports." The color drained from Linda's face. Gregory Harrison immediately began whispering urgent legal advice, while Donald Kessler looked like he was experiencing cardiac distress. The clubhouse had never witnessed anything like it. 312 residents, literally every homeowner in Cedar Ridge Estates, packed into a room designed for maybe 60 people, with another 20 media representatives setting up cameras. I'd positioned myself strategically in the second row, flanked by Margaret Chen and Robert Martinez, with my concrete landscape boulder specimen positioned beside the presentation podium. Linda's usual burgundy blazer had been replaced with funeral black. Every few seconds she'd glance toward the exit like someone calculating escape routes. Gregory Harrison whispered urgent legal advice while Donald Kessler perspired through his dress shirt. Detective Hayes' entrance with those arrest warrants had changed everything. The room fell silent, except for the mechanical whir of news cameras and the nervous clicking of Linda's pen against the table. Donald called for order with a voice that cracked. We'll now proceed with public comments regarding recent community concerns. I stood first, carrying my presentation boards. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice carrying easily through the packed space. This isn't about landscape boulders. This isn't about HOA covenants or property aesthetics or community standards. This is about accountability, transparency, and stopping corruption before it destroys our community. 47 documented collision attempts. The GPS tracker illegally placed on my vehicle. The spray paint vandalism captured on security footage. The fraudulent insurance claims constituting felony fraud. But the real presentation was the financial analysis showing $38,400 funneled from community assessments directly into Linda's family business account. Every month, you've been paying increased fees to fund Miss Pemberton's personal construction company. I announced, watching jaws drop throughout the audience. 9 contracts, 9 undisclosed conflicts of interest, 9 violations of North Carolina nonprofit corporation law. The video compilation played next 14 minutes of Linda's collision attempts, set to a soundtrack of crunching metal and scraping concrete. Miss Pemberton, I said, turning to face her directly while cameras rolled, you've spent $19,000 on lawyers, destroyed your $60,000 vehicle, committed insurance fraud, and stalked my family over a $300 landscape installation. But the real crime is the $38,000 you've stolen from this community through your family's construction business. The room erupted. Neighbors who'd been complaining about rising assessments suddenly understood where their money had been flowing. Mrs. Rodriguez stood up, shouting. The teenagers from Oakwood Circle actually started applauding. Linda's response exceeded my expectations. She launched from her chair. Her carefully constructed composure finally shattered under pressure. "This is harassment!" she screamed, her voice reaching high frequencies. These people don't understand property values or community standards. They move into established neighborhoods and think rules don't apply. Channel 9's camera captured every word. Margaret Chen actually gasped audibly when Linda pointed directly at me and shouted something about people like you ruining established communities. Gregory Harrison desperately tried controlling his client, but Linda was beyond legal counsel. She grabbed my evidence boards, attempting to destroy them before Robert Martinez and 2 other neighbors gently restrained her. "I built this community!" she shrieked, mascara running down her cheeks. "I protected property values. I maintained standards. And this is how you treat someone who sacrificed everything for neighborhood integrity." Donald Kessler called for recess, but nobody was leaving. Jennifer Wallace stood amid the chaos and made the motion everyone was anticipating. I move for immediate suspension of Linda Pemberton from the board pending criminal investigation and comprehensive financial audit. The vote was unanimous 5-0, with Linda's voting privileges suspended while handcuffed to Detective Hayes' chair. The aftermath unfolded like perfectly engineered dominoes. Within 48 hours of the board meeting, Linda's world collapsed. Tuesday morning brought her forced resignation. By Thursday, the Mecklenburg County District Attorney had filed insurance fraud charges carrying up to 8 months jail time and $8,000 in fines. Her insurance adjuster license was revoked Friday afternoon, followed immediately by suspension of Pemberton Property Services contractor certification. The financial reckoning was swift. Our emergency HOA audit conducted by Harrison and Associates CPAs recovered $38,400 in overcharges and fraudulent contracts. Every homeowner received a $294 refund check by New Year's. Richard Pemberton called me one final time. "The settlement check is in the mail," he said quietly. $12,500 as agreed. "Linda wanted me to tell you she's relocating to Arizona to live with her sister. But then I remembered the GPS tracker, the fake police reports, and the months of harassment my family endured. Some lessons cost everything. The governance transformation was remarkable. Jennifer Wallace won the special election for board president by near unanimous vote. The new board implemented conflict of interest disclosure requirements, monthly financial transparency reports, and public contractor bidding processes that would satisfy municipal audit standards. Our first community project under reformed leadership was the entrance renovation, funded entirely by recovered embezzlement money. Watching Sophia and Nathan help design the new landscaping alongside neighbors felt like vindication wrapped in community healing. The legal precedent spread beyond our neighborhood. Torres v. Cedar Ridge Estates HOA was cited in 17 subsequent property rights cases across North Carolina. The state legislature passed the HOA Accountability and Transparency Act, requiring financial disclosure and audit procedures. WSOC Channel 9's investigative series won a regional Edward R. Murrow Award for exposing suburban corruption. Reporter Amanda Foster still calls me occasionally for expert commentary on HOA reform legislation. The original collision videos have been viewed over 350,000 times on YouTube. My concrete landscape boulder became a neighborhood legend. We relocated it to the clubhouse entrance as a permanent display, complete with a brass plaque reading "Property Rights Protected 2024. The Concrete Justice Festival we established draws families from 4 surrounding developments every October, featuring food trucks, live music, and educational workshops on homeowner rights. Last year's attendance topped 1,200 people. The scholarship fund I established with the settlement money has helped 6 students attend college. Sophia's college application essay about fighting corruption earned her admission to 4 journalism programs. Nathan started a TikTok channel called Suburban Justice, covering HOA disputes across the Southeast. The personal healing surprised me most. My custody evaluation improved dramatically after the community rallied around our family. The judge noted that children benefit from witnessing parents stand up for principles and protect family interests through legal channels. My landscape architecture business expanded through referrals from neighbors who'd witnessed my documentation skills and strategic thinking. Apparently, methodical problem-solving translates well from HOA disputes to complex commercial design projects, and my reputation for achieving results the right way opened opportunities throughout the region. Sometimes David does defeat Goliath, but only when David comes prepared with evidence, allies, and 300 pounds of reinforced concrete.